Our reading today is from Martin Luther King Jr. Science investigates. Religion interprets. Science gives man, and I might add woman, knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals. I've shared before that math is not my forte. In fact, during college, I actually took a class entitled Mathematical Ideas for Liberal Arts Students, where we studied the history of math and solved word problems all day long. I'm not joking. And while I enjoyed science enough to receive decent grades, I never really felt excited about it until I took anatomy my junior year in high school. You see, in an effort to bypass chemistry, back to that math being the devil thing, I instead took oceanography and anatomy. And before you even ask, yes, we dissected everything we could get our hands on. Even a cat that my lab partners and I named Ali. I know, horrible looks, but you know. We named Ali because he was always up for a boxing match. The class was challenging and on occasion revolting, but I reveled in the wonder and practicality of it. I mean, who doesn't want to know why a cow's eyeball gleams when you shine a light on it? Or what a lung looks like when it actually inflates in front of your eyes? Or what the ink of a tattoo looks like when it reaches your muscle? I realized then that science and awe are inseparable. In my experience, knowing how a thing works or why it exists does nothing to extinguish the excitement of it. True, it diminishes some of the mystery behind it, but not the wonder of it. In the book, The Secret Lives of the Brain, neuroscientist David Eagleman writes, "Imagine for a moment that we are nothing but the product of billions of years of molecules coming together and ratcheting up through natural selection. That we are composed only of highways of fluids and chemicals sliding along roadways within billions of dancing cells. That trillions of synaptic conversations hum in parallel. That this vast egg-like fabric of micron-thin circuitry runs algorithms undreamt of in modern science. And that these neural programs give rise to our decision-making loves, desires, fears, aspirations. To me, that understanding would be a numinous experience, better than anything ever proposed in anyone's holy books." We all know that awe and religion go together like macaroni and cheese. That moments we categorize as awe-inspiring, the first time we saw our children, for instance, or a cloudless country night sky, the view from the top of Blood Mountain, the ocean during a storm. These moments are also the ones that humans are most likely to call spiritual. They move you, change you in some meaningful way. In his best-selling book, The Demon-Haunted World, Science as a Candle in the Dark, the late, great astronomer Carl Sagan writes, "Spirit comes from the Latin word to breathe. What we breathe is air, which is certainly matter, however thin. Despite usage to the contrary, there's no necessary implication in the word spiritual that we are talking of anything other than matter, including the matter of which the brain is made, or anything outside the realm of science. On occasion, I will feel free to use the word. Science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality. When we recognize our place in an immensity of light years and in the passage of ages, when we grasp the intricacy, beauty, and subtlety of life, then that soaring feeling, that sense of elation and humility combined, is surely spiritual. So are our emotions in the presence of great art or music or literature, or acts of exemplary selfless courage, such as those of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. The notion that science and spirituality are somehow mutually exclusive does a disservice to both. So we've established that science and religion are compatible. This is no surprise for Unitarian Universalists. We have our fair share of scientists lining the pews, and in fact, speaking of breath, the first Unitarian minister in the United States was none other than Joseph Priestley, the chemist who discovered oxygen. But science and religion mirror one another in more ways than just one. Just as science has its own share of deceptive claims, so too does religion. And in a faith like ours, where we are each on our own path towards truth, how do we determine a wrong turn? Again, in the demon-haunted world, Sagan rails against the dangers of pseudo-science. He writes, "Naturally, people try various belief systems on for size to see if they help. And if we're desperate enough, we become all too willing to abandon what may be perceived as the heavy burden of skepticism. Pseudo-science speaks to a powerful emotional need that science often leaves unfulfilled." When I first read this section, I was taken back to a story of a patient who died during my chaplaincy residency. I was a baby chaplain then, being baptized by fire, if you will. And one night I was called to the in-house hospice unit where a patient had just died. His wife was hysterical, howling on her knees, tears spilling across the floor. My job in that moment was to simply be with her, to allow her to express her emotions and to hopefully help facilitate a healthy first step towards healing. But she caught me off guard when she said, "I saw a man on TV who can bring people back to life through the power of the Lord. Call him. Find his number, please. He lives in another country, but I will pay to fly him here." She looked at me begging. She looked at her son pleadingly and repeated herself over and over again. I felt helpless because in her moment of desperation, she didn't care about the reality of the cancer, the resulting organ failure, or the cessation of her husband's heartbeat and breathing. Like Sagan wrote, the pseudo-science, or the pseudo-faith, of such a so-called miracle worker spoke to powerful emotional needs that science, reason, or our own experience leave unfulfilled. She needed to imagine that despite the reality of her situation, that hope was still present. And that hope was not found in modern medicine or even reasonable religion. Her faith was built on a religion in which, when taken literally, as she clearly did, the miracle of impregnating a virgin, giving sight to the blind, turning water to wine, and creating an entire universe in 7 days is possible. Surely, in her mind, a little raising of the dead cannot be too far-fetched. As UUs, we acknowledge this woman's source of wisdom as one of our own 6 sources of wisdom. However, we have a counterbalance to it. It's sort of built in. Our 5th source is humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. It's made clear in this source that we encourage skepticism and attempt to learn from the mistakes of the past. Those who wrote this source and voted it in would very likely consider that what this woman was desperate to believe in was an idolatry of the mind and spirit. So back to my original question. On the long road that is our spiritual journey, how do we know when we've made a wrong turn? Luckily for us, Sagan created a toolkit of sorts by which one can determine if they're dealing with science or pseudoscience. This toolkit has 15 questions you ask yourself in order to determine whether or not the claim you're tempted to believe in is bogus. I think the same toolkit can be applied to religious bogosity, if you will. Sagan's toolkit may not be a perfect translation for faith communities, but it provides for us an important step when searching for the truth and meaning. Because in our 7 principles, it isn't just a search for truth and meaning, but rather a responsible search for truth and meaning. For time's sake, I'll only cover a few of Sagan's 15 questions. Question number 2. Is the claim said to be based on ancient knowledge? As we well know, most religion is based upon ancient wisdom, texts, or stories. The age of the claims in religions often provides it with extra heft or legitimacy. Think about it. Well, my religion is 2,000 years old. Oh yeah, well mine is 2,300 years old. Even UUs have a rich history we use to validate ourselves. Perhaps then what differs between our faith and many others is that our theory that revelation is not sealed. That as new information comes to pass about who we are, why we're here, and how the world works, it's incorporated into our faith rather than dismissed. It's fundamental to our faith that our mission and values must change based upon new information so that it can evolve and continue to meet the needs of humanity. Just as good science continues to replace outdated, irrelevant, or disproven theories with newer, relevant, and correct theories, so must we as UUs. Question number 5. Do the claimants state that their claim is being suppressed by the authorities? This one kind of makes me laugh because I can't help but think of Scientology. If we're going to go ahead and talk about bogus science and faith, Scientology, one of the more bizarre faith systems, let's call it, exists in constant fear of being called bogus. Over and over again, we hear stories about the so-called suppression of Scientologists by agencies like the IRS, or I don't know, the entire governing bodies of France, the United Kingdom, Germany, Canada, and Italy. And each time Scientology is deemed illegitimate, the leaders allow retaliation by whatever means necessary. Surely a religion that must use terror tactics in order to bully their way to legitimacy would not pass Sagan's test. Question number 6. Does the claim sound far-fetched or too good to be true? Like the woman begging for the help of the charlatan spiritual leader to bring her husband back from the dead, some religions make claims that are too good to be true. Like a snake oil salesman, they prey upon the weak, the destitute, the suffering, so that the claimants benefit, no matter the outcome of the people they're supposed to be helping. Question number 7. Is the claim supported by hokey marketing? This one's pretty easy to spot. In other words, is your faith like the Blair Witch Project? Does it rely on internet mythology, lies, or silly catchphrases in order to pull people in? It's hard to imagine the discovery of a sacred truth needing a skywriter to sell itself. Question number 10. Are the claimants upfront about their testing? Now, I think this is quite a powerful question. Another way to ask it is, are you encouraged to question it? Are you encouraged to try it out for yourself? To come to your own conclusions about it? Or are you encouraged to simply take their word for it? This is another foundation of our faith system as UUs, that each person must come to their own conclusion about God, or heaven, or the great mystery. That we are supported in our seeking, and hopefully encouraged in it. And what should be remarkably obvious by now, that our faith leaders don't claim infallibility. They too are questioning. Question number 12. Do the claimants have legitimate credentials? This is a toughie for religions because we acknowledge that there are many ways to know something. So while we may look for the highest credentialed scientists to tell us what the truth is regarding black holes or how to cure malaria, we may not do the same thing of our faith leaders. There's a rich history of what is referred to as the called ministry in many faiths, especially when you consider that it's the only type of ministry presented in the New Testament. A called ministry is when one feels moved to enter the clergy. They feel called by God to become a minister without any formal training or education necessary, and can do so as young as 5 or 6 years old. Called ministry is as legitimate a ministry as any other, and there are some incredibly talented and inspiring called ministers. But where Sagan's toolkit comes in handy is by recognizing the benefits of being educated. I lost my place. This never happens. In a setting that requires faith leaders to fact-check, discuss their ideas with others who may not agree, and to learn the implications of their words, rather than simply preaching to the choir, if you will. As doing so creates an echo chamber of validation that has a tendency to reverberate over generations without ever having to withstand interrogations. And as we all know, that just because you say something multiple times, even on Twitter, doesn't mean it's true. This echo chamber would never happen in science. The scientific method was created so that claims could be poked and prodded and independently reproduced. So I'll go out on a limb and say that seminary, particularly an interfaith seminary, would be the equivalent of passing through the scientific method for faith leaders. So now that you have a few tools to use when encountering different spiritual avenues, I leave you with a word of caution. Skepticism and reason are valued parts of our faith. They provide important checks and balances, but they are not the entirety of our movement. There are still 5 other sources of wisdom. If left unchecked, our rationalism can lead to a sort of elitism, that sense that we know better. As Sagan writes, the chief deficiency I see in the skeptical movement is its polarization, us versus them, the sense that we have a monopoly on the truth, that those other people who believe in all those stupid doctrines are morons, that if you're sensible, you'll listen to us, and if not, well, to heck with you. This is non-constructive, he says. And so in our 5th source of wisdom, the phrase idolatries of the mind and spirit can also be translated to relying on reason alone. Sagan implores us to see the humanity in our questioning. Every question, he writes, is a cry to understand the world. The vulnerability of our questions is where we find religion. And so that cry out, that vulnerability, and that power, as King defined it, that beautiful triangle, is a rich place, full of potential. And it is where, on our best days, you can find Unitarian Universalism. May it be so.